Welcome to a new episode of the Luxembourg Financial Markets Association Spot and Forward platform. Today's session is dedicated to regulatory reporting and how it contributes to enhanced transparency, and so in laying the foundations through transparency for a more robust, solid and resilient financial market. The trigger for today's discussion is the EMIR, the European Markets Infrastructure Regulation, achieving 10 years since its adoption, and so offering us the opportunity to draw a line and analyze what lessons have been learned and what is coming next. To navigate this topic, we have today with us Mr. Andrea Gentilini, Head of Market Infrastructure Division at CSSF in Luxembourg. Thanks for being with us today. And I would like to go straight into the discussion with a first question. 10 years since EMIR started and came into force. What lessons have been learned, and most importantly, how have market participants been dealing with the set of best practices introduced by EMIR?
Thank you. Indeed, with EMIR, we have a response to the financial crisis that affected the financial market in 2008 with Bear Stearns and the Lehman Brothers collapse. EMIR has framed into regulatory obligation a series of practices that were available at the time, and now we can rely on a strong and robust regulatory framework. We have to remind that on 15 September 2008, nobody was anymore interested on how good were the price and condition offered by Lehman to close derivatives. Everybody was concerned on the operational and risk management framework in place with Lehman. Few counterparties were able to close and settle all transactions few days after Lehman bankruptcy, while many more needed months and years. The difference was which type of risk management arrangement were put in place. The difference is indeed due to the application of the practices or not. EMIR has closed the gap. Today, firms would comply with the EMIR requirement, they would be among those having a limited impact. After 10 years, we observe that some counterparties still do not entirely comply with EMIR obligation, meaning that the best practices framed into the regulation are not applied by all of them. It's quite worrisome, in particular in current market condition, isn't it?
Yes, I would definitely agree with you. But let me dig a little bit more on what happened in the previous years. Definitely complying with the set of obligations and best practices introduced by EMIR, there was a well-defined amount of resources and efforts to be put in place. At the same time, that effort should have been linearly related to the quality of the reported data, and quality remains a paramount given the amount of stakeholders consuming those reports and that data. With that in mind, and looking back to those 10 years of journey, what are your key takeaways on EMIR journey?
Indeed, we have a series of takeaways after 10 years. The first is the holistic approach to EMIR obligation. EMIR does not contain only the obligation to report to trade repositories, but this obligation is complemented and integrated by the central clearing and a set of risk mitigation techniques. Therefore, counterparties can improve the quality of the reporting, leveraging, for instance, from the information retrieved from the timely confirmation or from the portfolio reconciliation. Therefore, what is important is definitely not to manage the different EMIR obligation in a silo approach, but really to create a structured series of processes where the systems and the procedures are well integrated. Based on our supervisory experience, internal systems do not necessarily reflect the relevant information to be shared outside counterparties, client, and CA's trade repositories. This is amplified by inconsistency and inefficiency between the front and the back office. I can quote the report on thematic review on effective risk data aggregation and risk reporting by the SSM, where they said, thus far, none of those significant institutions, some of which are classified as global systematically important banks, have fully implemented the BCBS 239 principle, Weaknesses stem mainly from a lack of clarity regarding responsibility, accountability for data quality. It is often difficult to understand what the role and responsibilities of business, control and IT function are, and how those roles are allocated and exercised. Consequently, further effort will be needed in this area in the coming years in order to enhance the effectiveness of risk data aggregation and risk reporting. So in this sentence from this report there is a lot. The strong evidence that EMIR has been useful to improve market practices, transparency and in spreading risk awareness on derivatives. However, reporting data quality remained not adequate to first the regulatory and supervisory need and to evidence good practices within market operators. In terms of data quality, we observe that even relatively simple static data, for instance NFC plus or NFC minus or the corporate sector, are reported inconsistently and remedial actions are excessively long. This obliges NCAs to spend time and resources to follow the correction. Nevertheless, EMIR is a complicated text aiming at building a regulatory framework on a complex topic, therefore subject to continuous improvement in terms of details, RTS, ITS, and clarification ESMA guidelines, ESMA Q&As. There is still room for improvement. The quality of these changes is strongly linked to the active contribution of the industry.
And definitely there is room for improvement and on data and data quality. And given the scenario you just described, what do you think are the remedial actions that market participants should take? Is it more on processes? Is it more on technology, on governance? Where is that they should be focusing more?
Yes, but the question is, are firms operationally and technologically able to manage the entire value chain of derivative transactions? Because from front to middle and back office, from risk management to regulatory reporting policies, process and IT system should be consistent. So at the end, what you mentioned, I will say everything should be up to date in order to ensure that a company, a firm, financial, non-financial, is able to ensure the comprehensive compliance and outstanding internal policies and processes. We are still puzzled when counterparties state that they conclude swap, but their system cannot accept swap and therefore have to book as a spot and a forward or a forward to forward. Therefore, remedial action should include all necessary intervention to close these gaps, such as improvement in IT system, IT processes, data architecture, internal policies, processes, and procedures. It is also important to highlight that the fulfillment of EMIR requirement should be done in a structured way, which include, as mentioned, adequate governance, such as management body supervision, involvement of all internal control functions.
And yes, I would agree with you, Andrea. Those remedial actions cover the full workflow, which needs to be reviewed. And always keeping in mind the importance of quality, right? Which is paramount and requires additional efforts and resources to be achieved. But with that level of additional efficiency, to achieve that level of higher quality, are we just serving the need of derivatives transactions, or there is more that can be achieved with that review beyond derivatives transactions per se?
Yes, indeed. EMIR goes well beyond derivative transactions. Implementing EMIR was a difficult exercise for both the industry and the regulators. Nevertheless, EMIR has an unprecedented advantage to induce market players to review the system and processes to better reflect the reality of the trading activity. Firms should already possess and make use of high-quality granular data for their own risk management purposes. Firms should use EMIR data not only for reporting obligation, but they should extensively use them for the internal decision-making and risk management process. An efficient use of EMIR data, like any other regulatory reporting, should imply the possibility to link this data to ensure consistency and to improve the quality of the information delivered. An intelligent use of this data would allow entities to extract the added value in the regulatory reporting and therefore to reduce the cost of the compliance. So to see regulatory compliance as an opportunity. Furthermore, entities should focus their attention on data rather than on the regulatory reporting, remembering that data is king. being an event-driven reporting to trade repositories, which is then shared extensively among many regulators and authorities, notably all NCAs, European Supervisory Authorities, central banks, ESRB, Resolution Authority. Entities should be aware of the impact of the information they report. EMIR reporting affects also the image of those entities toward this large number of regulators and authorities. Regulators and authorities, in the interest of a safer and more efficient market, could now expect that the market strive to stronger risk management practices enhanced by an intelligent and more sophisticated use of data, including those required by EMIR reporting. So, at the end, there is a lot that entities can take and can improve, and implicitly and automatically they will increase their compliance with the EMIR obligation.
You mentioned the role of regulators and supervisors in your answer, and definitely when we think about EMIR, we normally spend more time on the time and resources requested to investment firms and so their actions to comply with the obligations defined in the rules. It is also true that when it comes to the national competent authorities, there is a lot of data to be ingested, and there is also an important impact from a technological point of view to collect, analyze the data, and then take the required action. So tell us a little bit more about the perspective from the point of view of the supervisors and of the regulators. What is the role they play?
Competent authorities have been impacted by EMIR in similar way than firms. EMIR applies not only to regulated firms, but to any entity trading derivatives, including corporate firms not previously subject to a specific financial regulation. EMIR implies that NCAs receive an immense amount of data. They had to make, and they are still making, huge investment in dealing with this new duty. NCA will continue to work hard on this context in the year to come. Currently, many NCAs are working and using EMIR data. However, data quality issues still limit the possibility to extensively rely on this data and require NCAs to invest effort and resources to address data quality issues, such as abnormal values, which could either be a misreporting or a real market singularity. Nevertheless, several publications have been made leveraging on EMIR data, such as on Archegos and on the increased role of CCPs. Other analyses are done by NCAs, European authorities to support the European legislator. Finally, to promote a data-driven supervision and supervisory convergence, a dedicated ESMA task force, I have the honor to chair, works in developing indicators for these purposes, as well as to monitor the compliance with other EMIR obligations. As a SSF in Luxembourg, we are designated as competent authorities to supervise the compliance with EMIR for most of the firms established in Luxembourg, such as banks, funds, and corporate. We concentrate our work on data-driven supervision to fulfill our mission with a risk-based approach. In practice, we rely on EMIR data and its quality for sampling and identify firms that need a close scrutiny. Inadequate quality of the reporting is a hint for the SSF for potential governance or risk data quality issues and may therefore trigger further supervisory actions. A good practice identified by the SSF with regards to adequate governance structure are also the implementation of dedicated key risk indicators for EMIR requirement, which are regularly reported to the management. The SSF use the tool available from desk-based supervision to on-site inspection and enforcement action. The SSF has been one of the pioneers in on-site inspection for EMIR and has already conducted such on-site inspection with its major players. The SSF has already sanctioned some entities in relation with EMIR in the past few years. It is important to remind that the purpose of sanction is not so much to punish as to prevent, educate, and dissuade. EMIR supervision consists in performing many checks and control, as well as specific and focused interaction with entities in scope of the regulation. Most checks do not lead to a sanction procedure, since we have other tools that enable the industry to improve the compliance. Only as a last resort is a sanction procedure launched. Nevertheless, if a sanction is given, making penalties public has become the principle. The publication is made once all legal remedies have been exhausted. This explains why it can often take several months between the pronouncement of the sanction and its publication. Since the goal of supervision is not to punish, the SSF as well as other competent authorities have developed tools to facilitate the supervision, such as specific data quality indicators to identify main issues and entities responsible for data quality breaches. We regularly review our indicators and methodology in order to ensure an ongoing improvement and an effective and proportionate supervision. We remind that effective use of data remains a union top priority, and data quality is essential to achieve this goal.
Thanks, Andrea. That was extremely clear. Now, looking back at what we have discussed, the previous 10 years and the importance of quality in the overall equation of transparency, what is next? What are we expected to do in the coming months and years?
As already mentioned, EMIR is subject to continuous improvement in terms of details, RTS, ITS, and clarification, thanks to ESMA Q&As. The forthcoming major changes are related to three main elements. First is the EMIR Refit reporting requirement introduced by the new technical standards, which have been published in October, will impact all counterparties subject to reporting obligation and will significantly modify the reporting framework. They will become applicable at the end of April 2024, thus in less than 18 months. Second, EMIR initial margin model validation for the counterparties subject to initial margin requirement, which are, based on the threshold introduced, only the larger players. Third, EMIR clearing strategy, an initiative launched by the European Commission to increase the clearing activity in the European CCPs. Taking into consideration the far-reaching impact of EMIR Refit reporting changes, it is important to well understand the major implication of these changes. It is true that we have still several months, but the implementation of the changes should be initiated now to be fully able to meet the April 2024 deadline. The SSF wants to draw the attention of the market players on some significant changes to the EMIR reporting framework introduced by these new technical standards and the related documentation, notably the end-to-end reporting in ISO 20022 XML, complemented by a new ESMA guideline and validation rule. 2. Framework for the mandatory delegation. 3. Information to NCAs for significant reporting issues. 4. The new control and feedback reports by trade repositories.
And when it comes to EMIR Refit, what would be the key remarks that you would like to share with us?
Well, on the XML message, the key takeaways is that there will be possible only to report using XML message, no more CSV file or other solution. On the framework for the mandatory delegation, the SSF reminds to all counterparties that even if the reporting is delegated to third party, the counterparties established in Luxembourg remain responsible for complying with other EMIR requirements, including the requirements under Article 9.2 of EMIR, which states that counterparties shall keep a record of any derivative contract they have concluded and any modification for at least 5 years following the termination of the contract. The SSF also raised to the attention of the NSA- that technical standards require trade repositories to provide feedback report not only to their client, the reporting submitting entities, but also to the other stakeholders involved in the reports, and more particularly to the reporting counterparties. On the information to NCAs for significant reporting issue, the SSF insists that whilst this requirement is new, it was already an appreciated market practice among several entities, and that this requirement is enforceable now under the EMIR law. On the new controls and feedback reports by trade repositories, the SSF want to raise the attention of the entities that, in case a report is rejected, the SSF will consider the report was not submitted, and thus the entity responsible for reporting did not comply with the reporting requirement, unless the report has been resubmitted and accepted within the deadline for reporting. For unreconciled reports, the requirement emphasizes the importance for counterparties to tackle the related issue by having arrangement in place with the other counterparties, respectively, their entity responsible for reporting or report submitting entity. The SSF expects entities to use the reconciliation feedback in order to ensure that the data reported is aligned between both counterparties, and where an inconsistency is identified, that both counterparties liaise efficiently in order to get the non-reconciliation resolved as soon as possible. Any feedback from trade repositories related to the absence of updated valuation or margin information, as well as abnormal notional amount, shall be reviewed by the entity and potential underlying issue shall be swiftly addressed. Entities are expected to use the information provided in the end-of-day response mechanism by trade repositories in order to identify any potential misreporting performed by them or on their behalf. As a conclusion, the SSF considers that there is sufficient time for stakeholders to implement the changes and that any failure to report accurately as from 29 April 2024 will be considered a non-compliance with Article 9 of EMIR. Therefore, the SSF reminds all stakeholders in the EMIR reporting value chain that the changes to the reporting framework are significant. In order to ensure a smooth transition, the SSF invites all stakeholders to start now preparing for these changes, and is confident that all stakeholders will be able to comply with the new requirement without any delay.
Thanks, Andrea, for your takeaways. And a final question is dedicated to Luxembourg financial community. What is going on in Luxembourg and what are we doing to be and arrive prepared to the next deadlines and timeline of EMIR?
We know that actors active in Luxembourg financial sector have been actively involved since the early phase of EMIR, thanks to the initiatives taken by the Industry Association. ALFI and the BBL have created working groups to support banks and asset managers. They organize on a regular basis events and conferences to raise the awareness of the industry on major milestones and changes related to EMIR. Other associations such as ALRIM, the Association of Risk Managers, lfma, ATEL for Corporate Treasurer, and EPFA are also actively involved. This active implication is very encouraging. Nevertheless, counterparties have to improve their compliance to EMIR to enhance the risk culture and the risk management approach. Complying with EMIR is in the interest of firms and not only for NCAs. Should a new Lehman-like event occur, everyone is interested in being on the safe side.
Thanks, Andrea, for your comments. I think we went through the lessons learned, what's coming next, but also we touched on very important topics on what needs to be done, how important it is to shift the attention from the obligation itself into the quality and the data itself. And I think a lot needs to be done to achieve the next deadline of EMIR Refit in time. And time, as we know, is always a very important element in solving the equation of any reporting obligation. With that in mind, I would like to thank you, Andrea, for being with us today. And for those of you watching online, stay tuned for the next episode of the LFMA Spot and Forward.